Well, hey, this is Rhonda Simmons, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Simmons Empowerment Foundation. And I am so excited. I say it every episode. That's because it's true. I really am excited because through this podcast, I have met some of the best people this side of heaven. And this episode is no exception. I am super duper excited because November is National Adoption Month. And as you know, the Simmons Empowerment Foundation seeks to have a home for unwed teen moms and to empower them through pre and postnatal health education, job skills training, and coaching. And so, with this being National Adoption Month, I wanted to talk to people who had either been adopted or are adoptive parents to get their stories. And so this is a special episode called Somebody's Child. Adoption Stories from the Heart. And so now I have a wonderful guest that I just met, and I cannot wait to hear her story. And you definitely want to grab some water, a cup of coffee, some tea, because she indeed has a story to share. And so I'd like to introduce to some and present to others, none other than Miss Dawn Williams. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I'm great, Rhonda. I'm so happy to be here and just be able to share my story with all of your listeners.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad that you decided to join me tonight. This month means something different to so many different people. And I don't have any children, so the whole concept of adoption is awesome and scary all at the same time. And so I am so glad that you're here today. And so tell us, are you an adoptee or are you an adoptive parent?
I am an adoptive parent, and I had my adoption happen 13 years ago. Just this September, it's been 13 years. So,
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is amazing. And so did you have any other children before you adopted?
no, no. Actually, what's interesting is my husband and I, this is a second marriage for both of us. And we both came into the second marriage with no children of our own. My husband, in his previous marriage, his wife was unable physically to have children due to some medical issues that would have compromised her if she gave birth. And then on my end, our marriage was not a great marriage overall. And in the end, he disclosed that he didn't want to have children. So we both came into the picture older than the typical parents are, because my husband is 15 years older than I am. So when we got together, I was 37 and he was 52. So, when we married, our second marriage. So we were already starting later than most to start a family together. But we were excited to do it, and it just didn't go our way. Just did not go our way right from the get-go. So we had a long infertility journey. And literally, when you are over 35 years old, if you do not conceive within the first 6 months of trying, without protection, obviously, then they encourage you to get testing, because it's, as we age, women, as we age, our egg vitality and the number of our eggs just reduces and reduces. So I went in for testing, and my husband went in for testing it, and there were fertility issues on both of our parts. So doctors gave us at that time, which was quite disheartening, a 1 to 2% chance of it ever happening naturally because of both of our issues. And I know it's heartbreaking, because I was one of those ones, and I don't know what your story is, Rhonda, but I was one of those girls who was like, ever since she was little, wanted to be a mom. And, I babysat when I was little, and I became a teacher. I worked in daycare and an infant room. I mean, I had the vision of a couple of children and just, being a stay-at-home mom. So that was my dream. So, I know women out there who may be in a similar boat, whatever it might be in your life, when you want something and you dream about it and you can see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, the whole bit, and it just doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. And there's no sense of control. There's total uncertainty if it will and whenever it may happen. And for us, it was a 6-year long journey. And everything was tried, Rhonda. I'm talking, we had prayer groups praying for us. I had the priest, I was raised Catholic. I had a priest come to my home, did special blessings. We did acupuncture. We were in a health and wellness program where we travel. I live in Pennsylvania, where we travel to Maryland once a month at least, that back and forth. And we were on a health and wellness program for 2.5 years, which was intense. That really helped to put your body in a physical state to really be as healthy as it could be. Where you were like, I'm talking, you were eliminating everything, Rhonda. Like everything had to be organic. There was no dairy, no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, no white bread, no, I mean, everything was taken, and you were adding homeopathics on a schedule, supplements on a schedule. And we did this for 2.5 years, no baby. I quit my job to kind of eliminate the stress that I was experiencing. I was a guidance counselor in an elementary school, so I was around children all the time, and kind of hoped I'd have my own. And then we did all of the medical treatments as well. So we did IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. So we did 3 of those. They all failed. Then they recommended we go right to the in vitro fertilization. Actually, they recommended that to begin with. They really didn't think the IUIs would work for us, and they were right, but we thought we would try them anyway. And the in vitro, I barely met the criteria to move forward with that, because what happens when you do in vitro is you're given hormonal shots to hyperstimulate the ovaries so that the ovaries produce more eggs than natural, so that when they retrieve the follicles that houses the egg, you then can have, possibly multiple embryos formed with the sperm that they use, in the old Petri dish that they talk about. But in my case, typically when women do that, they get about 10 follicles that form. I had 4. And if you didn't have 4, they wouldn't allow you to go through with it. So it's constantly this very big emotional roller coaster, and everything is getting blood work taken, and you're late to work, and you're this, it's just very stressful time. And when I did have the eggs retrieved, the embryologist said, I can't guarantee anything, she said, but it looks like we have 3 good eggs, because out of the 4 follicles, 1 was empty. So we have 3 good eggs and we have 3 good sperm. I'm hopeful. At that time, I was still working as a guidance counselor, and she called me that next day and she said, I'm so sorry, but none of the eggs would fertilize. And I was so devastated in that moment, because it was like, I put so much into expecting that this was going to be our one and only chance. And it's very expensive to do in vitro fertilization. And maybe about 15 states, even at this time, are covering infertility. So really back 13 years ago, 15, 16 years ago, there was like nothing was covered. So it was very expensive. You're putting like all your money on a roulette wheel and hoping it comes up. And there I was, very devastated, thinking, I don't even know where to go from here. Like, science can't put the most perfect egg and sperm together and get this, to happen. How is it going to ever happen for us, is what I felt, So, but I do have good news with the story.
Well, I'm so glad.
I do have good news. Now, it takes some bumps along the way, because let's say, maybe halfway through, like 3 years into the journey, I was ready to say, you know what? It is more important for me to be a mom than it is for me to bear my own child. And that's a really hard step for people who are suffering with infertility to get to, because if you haven't suffered with it, it's very common for a lot of people to say to you, why don't you just adopt? Why don't you just adopt? Well, it's not like, it's a big decision in and of itself. And it
really is.
Yeah. And that's another expensive path, and not an easy path either. And, we all want to, I think it's just ingrained in us. We want to have our own children that are our genetics and our, it's from us, which is why everybody says, oh, he has your eyes and she's got your hair, your curly hair, or whatever, and that you're not going to have any of that if you choose to go the adoption route. However, I was able to get to a point where I was like, you know what? Life's not going to go the way I plan it to go. And I can either be angry about that and miserable
Right.
and, pound my fist against the wall and have my own temper tantrum constantly,
Mhm.
or do you want to be a mom? Yes, I want to be a
Mhm.
mom. I felt like I was gifted. It was God's plan for me to be a mom, and I had so much love to give. However, when I said to my husband, I'm ready to adopt, he was not. And
Wow.
he
Wow.
just, I mean, not that he didn't ever want to, but he said, I still feel, this was 3 years in, and he said, I still feel like we should just try this still on our own. And what do you do with that? I mean, you got to be a team on it. And I had friends who said to me, oh my gosh, Dawn, are you going to be resentful of your husband if he never wants to adopt and you can't become a mom? And I said, gosh, well, I hope not. I said, but I will not force this, because I feel like every child deserves to have parents who want them 100%. And I said,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to twist his arm and talk him into something. Like, this has to come from him. And so what we ended up doing is, my prayer groups that I had praying for us, this was so beautiful. They said, you know what, we're going to change our prayer, and my husband's name is Tom. And he's like, we're going to change our prayer, and we're going to change it to helping Tom's heart change towards adoption. And I just let it be. And 2 more years went by, Rhonda. And so, I mean, that's long when you're really wanting to be a mom, right? 2 more years,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we're obviously trying naturally. It's not happening. We might have added some acupuncture in at that point, and we were
Mhm.
doing the wellness program and so forth, but nothing was really happening. One day I come home and he's got his laptops, he's sitting at the dining room table, and I'm like, hey, what you doing? And he's like, well, I'm just looking up how to adopt babies from Colombia. And I'm like, what? I was like, are you serious? Like, it was so
Yeah.
out of the blue to me, because we didn't
Yeah.
really have a lot of conversations anymore about adoption. I was just kind of letting things go their merry way.
Wow. Wow.
And I asked him what changed his mind. And interestingly enough, my younger sister had a baby, you know, a couple years prior to that. And I was helping to take care of him. And my husband would see me around him, and he said, oh, honey, he's like, you have so much love to give. He goes, you just have to be a mom. And I said,
Oh.
but is that what you want to? And he said, oh, absolutely. He said, but this, this,
Oh.
this has to happen. He's like,
Oh
so
my
then
goodness.
came the decision, the mutual decision to move
Yes.
forward with adoption.
Yes. That is so powerful. There's so much about your story that I can relate to, Dawn. The part about you being a guidance counselor in an elementary school. I was an elementary school assistant principal.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I totally get it. It is interesting how um, the thing we want the most, God will put us in a situation where we're surrounded by more children than we could ever birth in our lives, you know?
I know. I know.
Yeah. And so that is an amazing story. One of the things I do want to touch on, though, is that I don't think women who have no problems with fertility, I don't think they have a full understanding of the psychological burden that
Mm,
comes along with infertility.
you're exactly.
Knowing that your body is supposed to be able to do this,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
can't. And did you ever go through um, any of your lower moments where you just felt like a failure? Not
Absolutely.
saying that you were, but just because
Yes.
I know what that feels like. I don't have any children of my own either, and I can't.
Mhm.
And so I know how I felt, and I was just wondering if you felt the same way.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think it's like most things, Rhonda, unless you're in the situation, it's very hard to relate to. Like,
Mm.
people can't even imagine the amount of pain that you experience on a daily basis that you're bombarded with. And today, with the social media aspect of it, it's even
Yes,
harder. I mean,
yes.
one of my hardest times would be going, because like I said, I was raised Catholic. So one of my hardest times would be Mother's Day.
Me
So
too. Oh
yes,
my
Mother's
goodness.
Day was horrendous for me, because I would go to church and inevitably the priest would say, I'd like all mothers to stand. And The
Yeah.
tears would go down my face because it was
Yes.
year after year after
Yes,
year. And
ma'am.
I'm seeing them get recognized for this beautiful role that God wants for us, but yet I'm being denied it. And I just had so much confusion, and that psychological turmoil that you're talking about is
Yes.
this whole thing of our bodies are designed to do this. Why doesn't mine?
Yes.
I have this desire that God put in my heart, but yet he's not fulfilling it. Why is that not happening? How long
Yes.
am I going to have to wait for this? What's wrong with me? There are so many people who have babies that don't treat their babies well, and they're
Yes.
in somewhat abusive
Yes.
situations. And here
Yes.
I would give my child the world. And why would God not choose me to have one? And then you become
Yes.
almost like you feel like you're entitled to it, even though you know that you're not entitled to, but you're just so confused about everything. So Mother's Day
Yes.
was very hard, and just a lot of the comments too. I don't think people
Mhm.
realize, which is one of the things I like to do, is to raise awareness around infertility in general for the very
Mhm.
thing you mentioned, because people would say things to me that I don't think was ill-intended, but
Mhm.
very flippantly would say, you just need to relax, almost as though it's my fault. That's how it comes across. Like, well, it's because of
Yes.
you that you're not having this baby. Like, would you tell someone who has cancer if they would just relax, they would heal? Like, I have a
Yes.
physiological reason why I'm not, I have the
Yes.
tests to show it, So, or
Yes.
they would say things even in the schools. Oh my gosh, you were a school principal. So my first grade, actually the secretaries would say to me, "Oh, Dawn, you should go hang out on the first grade wing. They just drink the water there and they get pregnant." Yep.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Or the teachers that would say, "Well, I'm going to get pregnant here because then I'll be off in the summer and then I have my maternity leave and blah, blah,
Yes.
blah." I thought to myself, it must be nice that you can plan so well. In my head, I'm thinking this, I can't even get anything to happen. I never once saw a positive pregnancy test. And so all of the losses that come at one time and come flooding in when you get your period every
Mhm.
month's a no. Every time that you don't have, people say, "Oh, you must have fun trying." It's not fun trying after 6 years of failure. You know, it takes all the romance out of your relationship. You don't have the luxury of ever being tired, because if you have a prime window, you can't miss the prime window, because that could be your one and only shot at it. I
Yes.
mean, you scour the internet for every possible myth and trick and potion and lotion and anything that could
Yes.
possibly maximize your
Yes.
chances. I mean,
Yes.
it's just your life, your mind never leaves it. And I always envision being able to surprise my husband with, "We're pregnant," or
Yeah.
feeling the baby kick, or having the
Yes.
ultrasound, and none of those things. Or just even
Yes.
when they hand the baby to you and say, "It's a boy, it's a girl." Like, there's so
Yes.
many things people take for granted that
I agree.
you don't get any of that, and it's
I
very sad.
agree. And you feel cheated.
You do feel cheated.
It's not that I'm blaming God, but you feel cheated. I think the turning point for me with the whole Mother's Day struggle was I read in Proverbs where it mentioned something about 7 things will never be satisfied. And one of the things was the barren womb.
Mm.
And that helped me so much because I felt like people, and maybe this was just my perception, but I felt like people thought, well, how can you miss having a baby if you've never had one?
Yes, I've had people
You
say
know,
that to me too.
yeah. And, I'm so glad I'm a Christian because I didn't act upon that the way
Yeah,
I really felt it. But I felt like, okay, now God really does understand, you
that
know,
scripture that you're saying, that scripture epitomizes
yes,
the depths of the pain that you
yes,
can have when you have a dream so vividly that you can
yes,
almost feel it, and it is a loss. You don't have to
yes,
experience something just to. It's the loss of a dream. It's a loss of the life you envision for yourself. You know,
yes, Yes.
And that is very painful. You know, can I read you this quote? I have this quote in the book that I wrote, and I think this kind of sums it up too. It's by a gentleman by the name of David Platt. And he says, there is a unique pain that comes from preparing a place in your heart for a child that never comes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Because
Yes.
that's exactly what you're doing. It's
Yes.
years and years of preparing a place in your heart for this emptiness that never gets filled. Like it's a very
Yes.
strong pain. Yeah.
Yes. I'm so glad that you're so willing to share your story with me. And I feel comfortable talking with you as well. I remember before my husband and I got married, you should have full disclosure. And my infertility happened prior to us ever, starting to date or get married or anything. And even though he and I have known each other since childhood, I knew he didn't know about that. And I actually debated not telling him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was talking to a pastor friend of mine, and I was telling her about that, and she said, "You have to tell him,
Mm-hmm.
because if you start your marriage out on a lie, you are doomed for failure." And she said, "And that would be a really big lie."
Yeah.
you know,
You know what?
and
It was probably fear, right? It was the fear of, just like you said to me before when you said, feeling like, that you're a failure in some part. Would he not see you as the full woman? Would he not put you in that same perspective that he sees you now if he knows this piece of you? There's that doubt, there's that fear, and that's where it was stemming from, right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I'll never forget the day that I told him, and I was so nervous because I didn't know which way it would go. And my pastor friend told me, she said, "Well, one thing about it, if you tell him now before you get married, you'll get a chance to see his response, and that'll tell you everything you need to know."
It's
And
true.
uh, and I told him, and I to this day, I remember his response. There was not a hesitation. There was not that look of, well, this changes everything.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, his response was, "We've known each other since we were two, when you had no children. All these years, I've known you, and you've had no children." He said, "The way I see it, nothing has changed." He said,
No,
I'm in love with you, not
that's so
not the
beautiful.
children." Wait, what? He's a keeper.
Yes, he is a keeper, but you know what? They were very right, because that does tell you everything. Because
He does.
and then the fact that you were honest and you're open with him, and it's true. It's like he loves you for you. That just
Mhm.
is an adjunct to just expansion of what the two of you should
Yes.
be doing. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dawn, you brought up a book that you've written. And so since you brought it up, you got to share it with us. Let us know where
Yeah,
we can find it and what it's
I can
about.
show you the cover of it too. This is what it's the pretty in purple.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's called Free to Conceive. It is available on Amazon. And I wrote this book because it is the book that I wish would have been there when I was going through this infertility journey. Because if I could sum up in like one sentence, what I really needed at that time was for the pain to end, that excruciating pain, and to get this baby to come into my life somehow. Like those were the
Yes.
two things I needed. And there was nothing out there helping me with that. And
Yes.
I just released this book in May. So God is using me in this big way after my child that I ended up adopting is 13 years old. We adopted her as a newborn baby. So I got to have as much of the full experience as I possibly could with adopting a newborn and being available there for the birth and everything. But
Mhm.
my point is 13 years after that, which means 6 years of infertility, she's 13. We're talking almost 20 years later that I write this book. But the timing is perfect because I did so much personal development in these last 10 to 15 years that what I learned are the gems of wisdom that I included in this book to provide women who are in the same boat I was back then, that are longing for something, for somebody to understand what they're going through, to help them figure this whole thing out, find what the right path to motherhood is for them, and to have it be a peaceful path and a peaceful journey. I mean, that alone is success. And I offer something in the book, as you can see on the cover, there's a star. So it's a
Mhm.
5-point superstar method that I put in the book that enables them to determine what are the barriers that are getting in the way of them having ideal conceptions for motherhood to happen for them. And they get to identify those in the book. They get to learn how to remove those so that basically they are free and open to conceive motherhood in whatever way is right for them. And I offer them coaching if one-on-one if they choose to go that route, if they want help with that. So
Oh, that is so exciting. It seems like the last couple of weeks, Dawn, I have had the opportunity to just talk to many women about how they've taken their pain and turned it into power so that they can help somebody else. And you are a testament of that. And I'm just so excited that you have shared your story with us. That is amazing. How was your husband's response? Once he got on board with adoption, how was his response from that point forward?
oh my
Like
God.
getting to the day of adoption.
Yeah, and what's so interesting that you're saying that is when I was writing the book and I looked back on that exact thing, I saw that what I'm telling the women to do is what I naturally did in the adoption process, but I wasn't doing in the infertility part of the journey. So when
Hmm.
I switched how I was showing up and how I was mentally and emotionally and spiritually, when I changed that,
Hmm.
just flowed and things went so beautifully. And I'm like, wow, I should have done that before. But I'm going to teach them how to do it. But what ended up happening was we were both on the same page. I got a few referrals for adoption agencies to check in with. Now, the first two didn't go so well, Rhonda, because we were older. Now, at this point, I was 42 and he was 50, right, 42 and 57. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, that's getting up there, right? So what happens is these agencies said, you know what? I don't know how well we're going to be able to match you. They're like, because you guys are older and the birth mothers are very young and they're going to see you as grandparents rather than parents to their child. So they were very negative, the first two. And I was just like, oh my gosh, now I can't even adopt. It was just getting to be too much, right? So then
Yes.
I went to the third agency and hit the nail on the head, right? Like, I'm like, let's just approach this from the get-go. And I said, is our age going to be an issue? And
Hmm.
she said, you know what? I don't see it as an issue. She said, we actually have a lot of birth mothers who like the parents a little bit older because they're more stable in their marriage, they're more financially
Yes.
secure,
Yes.
just more mature overall with making this decision. And we can probably have you matched in 9 months to a year. All
Oh,
right.
wow.
All right. I'm going with this woman. Right. So
Oh, that is
that's what
fantastic.
happens. So listen to this. God works things out beautifully. So we signed up in December and we actually signed an agreement where we could be matched nationally. Like we didn't just keep it local because we wanted to expand our options
Mhm.
as far as, getting it to happen sooner. And September, we were matched in March. So we signed up in December. We were matched in March. And then our baby was born in September. And that's 9 months, just like a pregnancy, right?
Oh my goodness.
It's so
Wow.
beautiful. So
Yes, it is.
she's from Texas. Our baby was from Texas.
Oh
So
my goodness. I'm from Texas now.
are you? This is
Yeah,
so
I've been in Texas for about 20 years.
oh my gosh. What area of Texas?
Smack dab in the middle. Not far from Austin. And yeah, Austin's the closest.
Okay. She
Yeah.
was born in Amarillo.
Oh yeah, okay. Couple hours
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. So we drove out there and we were there for the birth. My husband got to cut the umbilical cord. I got to, have this little baby and take her right in for her first bath that moms don't even get to do, like the ones who gave
Oh
birth
my
don't,
goodness.
right? But I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, my story of adoption, like when you talk about like the title of your documentary here is Somebody's Child, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, Adoptions from the Heart or
Yes. Adoption stories from the heart.
from the Heart.
Mhm.
That's so true to what this is, because this birth mother, people never know, like, well, when you give birth and you're in an adoption situation, who gets the baby first? Is it the adoptive parents? Is it the birth mother? Like, who gets the baby when the baby is delivered? Well, technically, it goes to the birth mother because there are no papers signed at this point. It's just the intent of
Mhm.
adoption. So they handed the baby to the birth mother, and she was so precious. And we got this in a photo. She takes the baby, which, just a little side note, everybody, that this baby's name is Faith, because it has to be,
Oh, oh,
right? I
goodness.
mean,
Yes.
there wasn't faith in this process. I don't know what it was, right? So,
Yes. Yes.
so the birth mother hands Faith to me, Rhonda, and she says, "Now go to your real mother."
Oh,
Now,
oh my
that's
goodness.
just like, and
Yeah.
that's how I felt, because what's the most beautiful thing is, I still, before this happened, in my own mind, when I was wondering about adopting a child, I'm like, I wonder how it's going to be. Like, am I still going to yearn for my own genetic child? Am
Mhm.
I still going to want that? And you know what? Another thing that I feel like is the most miracle of God, when she handed me that baby, and she said, "Now go to your real mom." From that second on, Rhonda, I never had another yearning for, like, but I still need to have my own. Nope. This
Mm-mm.
was my baby, almost as though I gave birth to her myself. Like, this was like the destined child for me. Like, no other way. There was
Yes.
no other child that was the right child for me except this child. And when you say
Yes.
somebody's child, I'm that somebody in this plan. It
Wow.
was meant to be Tom and Dawn's child, without a doubt. And it came to the point where I was like, it was worth all the pain, because
Yes.
it was
Yes.
worth all the pain because she's meant for us. Like, she's
Hmm.
the chosen one for us,
Hmm.
you
And
know?
isn't it just like a birth mom? And even it's mentioned in the scripture how when a mother gives birth, the labor is excruciating, but as soon as the baby comes, all of that is just forgotten about for the joy of the baby being here. And
Oh my
so
gosh,
you got a
that
chance to
analogy is
experience.
perfect, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying that, it's really making me think that the pain of those 6 years was like my labor, you know,
Yes.
an extra
Yes.
long labor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
A
The
lot of
longest.
pain, right? So I did have pain. You're right. Like, there was labor involved in this motherhood for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And then it all just, oof, yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
right.
That is so amazing. Only God knows how to do it. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because when we try to make things happen on our own, and even positive things like trying to have a baby, but when we're trying to do things on our own, it doesn't work out a lot of times. It doesn't we don't get the good feels that we
Mhm.
we want to have. And there's a whole lot of stress and tension involved. But isn't it interesting how, you can kind of be like that rat on the wheel, and then God just releases a blessing and poof, it's like
I
right
know.
there. What you struggled for 6 years with, was done in 9 months, and God had the plan all the while, and you just had to get to that moment. That is
Exactly.
so amazing. So
It's
amazing.
funny that you say that, because I had a friend of mine who, after the in vitro didn't work, she came into my office at the school, and she said, "Well, Dawn, it looks like, God closed the door for you." And, just as the one scripture, I don't have the exact scripture, numbers, but the one where, he has, abundantly more planned for you, like he
Hmm.
will make good of any situation. And
Yes.
he's going to give you more for your pain and all.
Yes.
Quite a
Yes.
few scriptures that speak to that. And
Yes.
I said, I looked at her, because even though I was a faithful person, I looked at her and I go, what could be better than
Correct.
me having my own baby? Like, okay, you have these scriptures, I hear you,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
what could be better than that? And you cannot see it in the moment. That's the thing.
Right.
Like,
Mm-mm.
that's where true faith comes in, because if we truly have the faith and we know that God only has his best for us planned, and he
Mhm.
knows what that destiny is for us, we just have to trust him along the way. And that's when we need the most trust, when we can't see it,
Yes.
when it's hardest to believe it. And now when I look back on it, and I'm like, wow, the fact that I was able to have this child who's meant for us and write a book that can help so many other people have that same faith. Heck
Wow.
yeah, that's better. I just couldn't see it that many years ago, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I tell you, your joy is contagious, absolutely contagious. And I'm so glad that you are sharing your story with me. But what folks don't know is that you have planned a surprise for this particular episode of our podcast. And I'm going to let you introduce your surprise because
Heck yeah.
I'm just, oh, I'm so excited.
I will have to go sneak out and get her though, if that's okay.
That is okay. I will talk until you get back.
Okay. So I have a little surprise for you, and she did get fair warning on this.
Uh-huh.
So my surprise is to just share with you my beautiful daughter, Faith, my 13-year-old daughter, Faith, and let her share in her own words what it's like to be adopted.
Yes, yes, I would love to hear that. Oh, this is so exciting.
I know.
This is so exciting. So I will talk to the audience while you go
Okay.
and you get your daughter, Faith. Oh my goodness,
Okay.
I'm so excited.
I will be
So,
back in a jiffy.
okay, I will definitely be here.
Okay, thanks.
Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, I am so excited. This is an amazing episode called Somebody's Child, Adoption Stories from the Heart. You have been hearing uh, the story of Dawn Williams and all that she has gone through in order to have her baby. And I am so blessed by this story. You know, so many times we are faced with what we want and how we want to grow and what we want to do and all of that. But you know, I guess that's why the scripture says in Proverbs 3 and 5 to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And when we trust God, God knows how to work everything out so beautifully that, in fact, it's better than we could ever imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special guest here. My name is Rhonda Simmons, and what is your name?
Faith.
Hi, Faith. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, welcome to our show. Tonight, well, first of all, I have a podcast and I'm doing a special episode because November is National Adoption Month. And I'm so excited. I've been talking with your mom, and oh my goodness, she is such a joy to talk to. And she's been telling me her story about how you came about. And our episode tonight is called Somebody's Child, Adoption Stories from the Heart. And so your mom shared with us that you're adopted. And so I just wanted to get a feel for how you feel about being adopted. What does that feel like to you?
Um, well, pretty cool, like knowing that I'm adopted because like because a lot of like kids aren't like like their parents like could have kids, but like others like can't. And that's what happened with my mom. And it's like pretty cool like thinking that I was like born from another mother pretty much. And that's just like so cool because like a lot of kids like don't really know that about themselves, or like some parents like don't tell that like to them. But when I was told, like I've known my whole life, and I think it's pretty cool because like I get to experience like different things than other kids do. Like um like some kids like say like, oh, my mom like told me this story like when she was pregnant with me, like when I was like when she was pregnant. I was like, okay, it's cool, but not gonna lie, I don't really care because I've never like heard like I don't have my own stories of that, but I have like better stories than that. Like when like of like when I got adopted and like when I was born. And I was
Yes.
one.
Wow, that is amazing. And how do your parents treat you? Do they treat you like you're someone else's child, or do they treat you like you're theirs?
Well, they treat me like they're theirs, but I was like, yeah.
What were you gonna
No,
say? Do you feel like
well,
you don't belong to us? Or do you feel like you do belong to us?
Well, we look alike. They're like,
It's true. She's like, we look alike. Like, it's so funny how God plans things like that. Like,
yes,
he put us together and people think we look alike anyway, you know?
yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think you have the best mom. And do you ever wonder um, what your life could be like if it weren't for your mom and dad having so much love to give?
like sometimes I think about like, what if I wasn't in this family and if someone else chose me? Like, I probably wouldn't have like all the stuff I have. I probably wouldn't be able to have a horse like I do now.
You have a horse? You have a horse? No.
I have two horses. Two horses, six bunnies, and three dogs.
Oh yeah, average 13-year-old I know doesn't have a whole farm. Oh my goodness. That is amazing. So are you good at riding?
Yeah, I've been riding for 6 years.
6, 7 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, since you were young.
Yeah.
Okay, that is so
But very little
cool.
on a big horse then.
Wow, wow, that is amazing. So, um, how do you feel, um, how do you feel about motherhood? Because one day you're gonna be an adult and you'll be faced with the decision. Maybe I shouldn't ask that question. Mom may not want me to ask you that question
Fine.
that
It's all
early. Yeah.
good.
But in light of your adoption, how does that make you feel about your future as an adult?
Meaning like, would she want to adopt? Is that what you're thinking? Or would she want to have her own? Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
she's asking.
Well,
One of each.
maybe I don't know.
That's okay. You've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard decision.
Yeah. And let me tell you, if your dad is like my dad was, um, if my dad had his way, I wouldn't have married until I was like 45. It's something about being a daddy's girl, let me tell you. They become very protective,
Mhm.
very
Yeah.
protective.
Yeah.
Has he has he embarrassed you yet?
Yeah.
Doesn't take.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to continue, especially when you start dating. It's going to continue. So, oh my goodness. Well, I am so excited for you. What do you want to be when you grow up? You have any idea?
Something to do with horses.
Kind of figured. Okay. So, Dr. Faith, you want to be a veterinarian?
Mm-mm.
Nope, she doesn't
Oh
want to
no.
do
I do not want to go to college at all. I hate school.
Okay,
Not a fan of school at this point in her
Uh-oh.
life, no.
okay. Well, that's pretty typical. I understand. Okay. I understand. Well, I am so glad that you were able to be on the show with your mom tonight. It just means so much to me. And to see you happy and thriving and surrounded by so much love. Your mom is just like a ray of sunshine. Okay, don't roll your eyes.
She talks
Oh
good,
my goodness.
don't you?
Oh my goodness. Well, any questions you have or any thoughts you want to share about adoption?
Anything you want to say? Would you recommend that if someone is adopted, that their parents tell them on the early end rather than keeping it a secret? Yeah. Because I think sometimes
Like, yeah, like I feel like some kids like get like really upset at their parents when they like kind of like keep that from them for like a long time, and then out of nowhere they're like, we got talked to and like you're adopted and stuff. Like
yeah.
that's like a really big surprise, and like that's kind of scary.
Mhm.
Do you remember how old you were when your parents told you?
Nope.
You know, I remember she was probably 4 or 5 because her question to me was, Mommy, did I come from your belly? And I never wanted to lie to her. And I figured I will tell her when the time is right. And so I told her in a language that was appropriate for a 4 or 5 year old, but she knew then that she did not come from my belly. And then we had a nice discussion about it. And we just kind of grew that discussion through the years with her aging. So
Wow.
yeah.
What do you remember her first reaction to your answer?
Was always beautiful. It was always like with bright eyes and smiles. It was because I always wanted her to see how much love was involved from her birth mother to us, and the love that her birth mother had to be able to give her a life that she couldn't give her the life that she knew this child deserved. And she knew that there were so many couples that were suffering and couldn't be
Yes.
the parents they wanted to be. And I said, you've got so many people that love you that you never ever have to doubt that you were wanted and chosen and so loved. And it's a beautiful thing that she was able to help mommy out, because some mommies can't, their body parts don't work well enough to be able to have babies on their own. And
Yes.
hopefully
Absolutely.
loving people like the birth mothers make that possible for us. So
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Absolutely.
grateful.
Yes. Yes. I can tell. I can tell. That is so wonderful. I am so glad that you're both here. You have made my day. You really, really
Aw.
have. And I hope that your book sells, quickly and, and just keep selling because you have a powerful story. And there are so many women who need to hear it. And like I said earlier, before Faith came in, I love how you took, because this is definitely past tense, you took your pain and you
Mhm.
turned it into power. And I think that is an amazing thing. Faith, you are beautiful.
Oh,
You
Thank
really are.
I have
You
to
really are.
admit.
Yes, yes. Now, Faith, do you think you'll ever meet your birth mom?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I'm excited for
Okay.
that. Yeah.
We've talked about it, and
Yeah.
she asked me when, and I don't really have an answer for an exact date or age, but I said to her, we will definitely make it happen. I would want to do the same if I was in her position, so I get that. And when I feel like it's emotionally the right time to do that, we're going to make it happen. So
Wow. Wow. And that says so much about you too, Dawn, that you're secure,
Mhm.
in your love for your daughter, that you're able to step
Mhm.
aside for a moment
Yeah.
to let her discover,
Yeah.
who she is and where she came from and all of that, and know that you're still mom.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I do feel confident in the love that we share. And I know that she knows, that I'm always in her corner and want the best for her. And yeah, it can be a little threatening. I get where you're coming from, but I feel like it's just more people who love her, and
Absolutely.
you never ever have too many people to love you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, when I was a teacher, I started off one particular class with a writing prompt, and they had to finish the sentence. However, they chose to finish it, and they had to write for just 5 minutes. And the statement was, I've learned that sometimes, and there was just a blank. They had to finish the statement. And I was one of those teachers where anything I asked my students to do, I would do too. And so I wrote for 5 minutes and we all shared our writing. And one of the things I wrote was, I've learned that sometimes family has very little to do with blood, but more with love.
Oh, it's
And
so
so,
true.
yeah, yeah. And your family is definitely filled with so much love. And so I thank you so much for being with us tonight. Wow, we're famous. Oh my goodness. Well, any final words of encouragement or wisdom you want to share, Dawn?
Hmm. Think so. I think we pretty much covered everything. But I remember to this day the piece of jewelry that I gave to the birth mother, and it was a heart that had it was like a three-way heart because it was her heart and our heart as adoptive parents, and then the baby that we shared together, and it was all intertwined. And I think it's truly a symbol of the beauty of adoption.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Faith, it has been a joy meeting you, and I wish you all of God's best as you grow up to be the great woman that He wants you to be, and whatever path you choose to take as far as career and motherhood and life in general. I wish you all of God's best.
Thank you. Say thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
That is all right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I really appreciate you both being here. I really do. And